US investor. So you are a US investor and you are investing in Mexico, right? You earned 48% in Mexico, right? So what will happen to exchange rate? If you invest in Mexico and when you convert back to your US dollar, currency will depreciate 40%, right? Look at that. Approximately is equal to interest in home minus interest in foreign. So foreign currency will be depreciating 40%. So look at the formula here, right? So whether you are investing in the US, you still ended up earning 8%, or whether you are investing in Mexico, you still ended up earning in 8%, right? So the difference between interest rate parity, purchasing power parity, and international Fisher effect is that interest rate parity says that interest rate parity does not categorize interest into nominal and real. It is just say that if interest is high, it currency appreciate. The purchasing power parity says that if inflation is high, that country's currency will depreciate. While the international Fisher effect, it says that it categorizes interest into two, nominal and real. It says that higher interest rate that is mentioned here in nominal interest rate includes a part of inflation, right? Because real interest rate are the same across the countries. So if real interest rate are the same, then the difference is just because of inflation. So if inflation is high, that country's currency will go down. So here you see 8% United States, Mexico is 48%. So if difference is 40%, so it means inflation is 40% higher in Mexico. So Mexican currency will go down. So Mexican currency will experience 40% loss in its value, right? So let's just see the answer here. So if the investor from US and Mexico required to have a same real return, which means the same real interest rate, then any difference in nominal interest rate is due to the expected inflation. So thus the inflation rate in Mexico is expected to 40% above the inflation rate. So 40% currency will go down due to the formula that we learned here, right? Currency appreciate or depreciate? Currency will depreciate minus 40% approximately. Which one? The Mexican peso, right? This is the answer here. Okay, now limitation of, right? Yeah, limitation of international Fisher effect. Because international Fisher effect relies on PPT. So the limitation of Fisher effect is that the difference between nominal and actual interest rate is not consistent over time. Sometimes real interest rates are rising, inflation is going down, or inflation remains the same, real interest rate is rising. Thus, the Fisher effect can effectively use nominal interest rate to estimate the market's expected inflation over time period. The market may be wrong. So if you just say that okay, interest rate rising is because of inflation rising, then it is wrong. You need to see that whether real interest rate is rising or whether inflation component is rising. Just merely looking at the nominal interest rate doesn't mean that inflation is rising. Sometimes maybe the country real interest rate is rising. Then there's a limitation of PPP because The other country characteristics beside inflation can affect exchange rate movement. For example, income. If income rises, then what happened? The government control rises. What happened to the purchasing power parity? We just see that the purchasing power parity holds without any intervention of the government, but government do interfere. Then we have a limited. And since international Fisher effect depends on PPP, so if the government have control over there, through tariff, through export quotas, import quotas. So then PPP is not, implemented in real sense over there. So even if the expected inflation derived from Fisher effect properly reflects the actual inflation rate, so future exchange rate subject to an error because there are other factors: income, government control, expectations, right? So exchange rate does not only depend on inflation and interest, it also depends on government control, expectations, and income level as well, right? So then theory versus the reality is that the I international Fisher effect theory contradicts how country with a high interest rate can attract more capital flow, therefore cause local currency to strengthen. In IFE, we say that higher interest rate means currency will go down because in that interest rate, a component of inflation is high, right? If we solely base our idea on just interest rate parity, then the exchange rate must appreciate. The international Fisher effect also contradict how central bank may purposely try to raise the interest rate in order to attract funds and strengthen the value of local currency. So that, direct intervention through sterilization or non-sterilization, it also contradict over there, right? For example, if central bank throw the certificate into the market and increase the interest rate, all the banks will buy the certificates from the central bank, and the bank will, the central bank will suck all the money and keep it to itself. So in that case, the IEF says that higher interest mean higher inflation component. So that also contradicts to the theory of central bank intervention through sterilization or non-sterilization type. Whether the international Fisher effects holds in reality is depend on countries involved and the period assessed. The international Fisher effect theory may be especially meaningful to situation in which multinationals and or large investors consider investing in countries where the prevailing interest rates are very high. Like we saw the example, 48% interest rate. Then it doesn't make sense. One country is giving 8% and other country is giving 48%. Sorry, 48% interest. Then we can see that maybe it includes the international Fisher effect. So interest rate is high because there is a huge component of inflation inside this interest rate. So then we consider using international Fisher effect, theory in practical if interest rates are too high. So if we want to compare the interest rate parity, purchasing power parity, and international Fisher effect, so all the three theories relate to the determination of exchange rates, right? And they have different implications. So the interest rate parity, which I just mentioned a couple of times, so one more time here, interest rate parity focuses on the forward rate differs from spot rate, and the difference is because, and degree of difference that should exist, it relates to a specific point in time. So interest rate parity says that the currency will, so they're going to be higher forward rate premium if country is giving you a higher interest rate. So when you convert back from forward agreement, the forward premium will be higher. The PPP And international future effect focuses on how currency spot rate will change over time. So interest rate parity does not explain the interest rate parity has nothing to do with exchange rate. It has to do with the forward premium. So that is the biggest difference. So many students, they're confused. The interest rate parity has nothing to do with exchange rate. It has to do with forward rate, forward agreements. The purchasing power parity and international Fisher effect, they has thing to do with the exchange rate, right? So whereas purchasing power parity suggests that the spot rate will change in accordance with the inflation differential, the international Fisher effect suggests that it will change in according to interest rate differential. So simple, the purchasing power parity and international effect, international Fisher effect, this says that the currency will appreciate or depreciate according to inflation. International Fisher effect adds further that the difference in interest is because of inflation. So the difference in interest rate is because of inflation. Higher interest rate mean higher inflation, and higher inflation mean currency value go down. So purchasing power parity is related to the IFE because expected inflation differential influence the nominal interest rate differential between two countries. And that I explained a number of times. How purchasing power parity is related to international Fisher effect, because both decisions both decided on the basis of inflation. The international Fisher effect decide on the basis of inflation, and it says that inflation is high because of, interest is, the international Fisher effect bases their discussion on interest rate, and they say that higher interest rate means higher inflation, while PPP says that high inflation means currency go down, right? So that country who is having high inflation, its currency will depreciate. So here we go. So we have the theories and these are the summaries. So interest rate parity, we'll talk about forward rate premium and discount. Purchasing power parity focuses on spot rate and expected spot rate, and it bases their decisions on inflation differential. International Fisher effect, it also tells you about exchange rate and spot exchange rate, expected spot exchange rate, and it bases their decision based on interest rate differential. And that's the summary, you can just read it by yourself. So this is the end of the chapter. I have explained a number of times what is PPP. So just pause the video here and read the summary, and pause the video here to read the difference of the international Fisher effect and all those stuff, right? And how these PPP, IFE, and IRS, they are related and how they are different. So that's all. I would be uploading its assignment, I think assignment 6 for this chapter, and remember that it will be due on our next class, and only handwritten. So let me write it down here, handwritten. Okay, you can use ePen like I am using the ePen. You're allowed to use that, but please respect the due date. Okay, any question regarding our today's lecture? If no more question, then we will be continue our further analysis of chapter 7 and chapter 8. We will be closing down both these chapters. So till the next week, stay safe, take care, and if you have any question, please do write in our WeChat group.
Okay. The exam, when is this?
Okay, just wait a second. So let me stop it here, and we will be talking about the exam after the recording here.